What on earth is going on?
I think it's a disgrace that this has been allowed to happen.
Yeah, welcome to mayhem. It's not crisis mode for Wrexham just yet, is it? It's surprising if you listen to Sam Lillibury's pre-season prediction. I've gone on Twitter, had a bit of a search this morning, and I've seen... Hello everybody, welcome back to the Sportsman Untitled. No Simon today, unfortunately, after Coventry's big win at the weekend, so you have to suffer with me, Conor McGilligan. I'm joined by Kris Voakes, Sheffield Wednesday fan and fantastic journalist, if I do say so myself, and Gab Sutton, our EFL aficionado. Is that one? That range?
Yeah, I do. It's funny you said, if I do say so myself, because you're complimenting somebody else. you only use that expression when you're complimenting yourself.
Picking you up already? Yeah, nitpicking already. Doesn't like Simon not been here. We're here to discuss the Championship weekend, which was full of goals, full of entertainment and chaos. We're going to be speaking about Kris's team, Sheffield Wednesday, a little bit later on in the programme, but I think it's pretty obvious, isn't it, Gab, where we start for this weekend? An absolute blockbuster at Pride Park. Defending, I don't think was a thing, was it, in the 3-5 result? But what were your thoughts on it overall, mate?
I think really impressive from Coventry's point of view. A bit of a surprise after Coventry really struggled going forward, didn't they, on the opening day against Hull City, drawing a blank goalless draw. This time around, the front three, I think, of Hadji Wright, Brandon Thomas-Asante, who was coming in for the injured Sakamoto, and of course, Ephraim Mason-Clark on the left. They really combined so well. And then you've got Jack Rodoni in the 10, who brings that energy and that aggression in terms of the press. And then you've got Victor Torp, who really controlled things superbly in midfield and was at his creative best. So really exciting attacking performance from Coventry City, and definitely stands them in good stead for the rest of the season.
Yeah, they're an interesting team, aren't they, this season, Kris, Coventry? It feels like they could get very, very close. And I think what Gab said there in terms of Torp, Mason-Clark, getting a bit of form this season, getting towards the back end of the season, firing and potentially in the top six is absolutely unequivocally clear. Needs to happen, doesn't it? Yeah, and they've traditionally had a bad start under Mark Robins. Simon was joking last week about how it's just our bad start, but putting in a performance like that, particularly after going 3-2 down, I thought they showed real kind of fight, as well as that they've obviously got quality, and that's what normally comes out over the course of the season. But that fight coming from 3-2 down as well, having had 2 leads, they could have just turned over and said, well, it's maybe not our day. They just pummeled Derby over a 7-minute period, scoring 3 goals. Fantastic reaction. Yeah, you kind of felt sorry for Derby in the end, didn't you, Gab? It was 3-2 at one point. They got back into it and you were thinking, can they edge it out? But Cov just got stronger, didn't they, towards the end, and that was all she wrote, really. Yeah,
I think Derby, a little bit disappointing to have conceded 8 goals in their first 2 league games. A bit of a surprise in some ways, because improving the defence is one of the things that we had associated with John Eustace in the last third of last season, where they really tightened up. And so I think there's some work to be done on the training ground. I think he'll want to strip things back for next week and make sure that they've got those steady foundations, because a little bit uncharacteristic, I think, from Derby.
Wrexham. Okay, I've gone online, I've gone on Twitter, had a bit of a search this morning, and I've seen Parky out by some Wrexham fans.
Well, if you watch the first series of Welcome to Wrexham, that's pretty much what they were saying back then. And a few years later, you'd say that he's done not too bad a job, wouldn't you? But I think they've been great from what I've seen of them in the first couple of games. I've really enjoyed the way they played at Southampton. I thought they were well worthy of that 1-0 lead. They just couldn't hold on at the end. They probably should have had a second at some point in that game. And again on Saturday, I thought they caused West Brom a lot of problems. They will just need to take those opportunities while they're on top, like any team in the Championship. But I don't think they're far off, and they've got Wednesday next, so they'll be fine.
Well, that's kind of how I see it as well. I mean, they just lost to Southampton, didn't they, by that single goal. I thought it was a very good West Brom performance as well. Very good West Bromwich Albion performance against them at the weekend. I thought Isaac Price was brilliant. Obviously, Tom Fellows was excellent as well. Hegebo, I've got that pronunciation right up top as well. Absolute battering ram.
2-3. It's not, you know, you go into Sheffield Wednesday, you're going to be judged on these results, aren't you? Not up against West Bromwich Albion, not up against Southampton. It's not crisis mode for Wrexham just yet, is it?
No, I think from Wrexham's point of view, definitely need to tighten up a little bit from the evidence of the game against West Brom. Wouldn't surprise me to see Arthur Okonkwo come in for Ward to give them a bit more stability in the goalkeeping department.
Struggled, didn't he, Gab? Danny Ward at the weekend.
Yeah, wasn't his best showing. I think definitely for Wrexham, the first two games, the real positive is that they've been creating chances as well as scoring goals. Kiefer Moore looks like a real focal point. I think he could be a brilliant signing for them. And I think both Josh Windass, who Kris will know about from his time at Wednesday, and Nathan Broadhead, they've looked like good additions going forward. I think from Wrexham's point of view, they just need to solidify a little bit. But some positive signs. I think we've got to take stock of things 10 games in.
Yeah, they've got plenty of quality, especially in the forward department. When you think Windass went off early with an injury on Saturday and they bring on Nathan Broadhead, it's not too bad, is it? Like they've got clear quality there. I think with a little bit of time it'll come together for them. They're going to get more than enough wins to be fine this season. I think just because they're not going to go necessarily get promoted again, I don't think that's a bad season. Solidify, get things right at the back a little bit, and they'll be just fine in this league.
Can I just make one more point as well? I reckon there's probably a tiny minority of Wrexham fans who are saying Parky out or whatever, but I imagine that the vast majority of Wrexham fans are actually very realistic about this season. They see it as a building campaign, and I think the majority of Wrexham fans are firmly on board with what this group of players have achieved over the last 3 seasons in the unprecedented back-to-back promotions, and I think that's earned a lot of loyalty, and I think they're getting it.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and I think that's just, as you've just quite rightly said, Gab, the minority. Quick word on West Bromwich Albion then. Impressed by?
Very, positive start, maximum points, real positive signs from Ryan Mason. I think sometimes when you get a coach that isn't proven as a number one in senior football before, you don't know quite how they're going to adapt. But I think with Ryan Mason, the real encouraging thing is that he seems to know, as well as having an in-possession identity of what he wants to do, he also seems to know what those extra ingredients are, the physicality, the willingness to battle, and he seems to be able to put it all together. And so, I really like the look of Ryan Mason, and I think Isaac Price had a fantastic second half of last season for West Brom, even though they weren't doing so well collectively. Now he's scoring the goals and looking at his creative best, so Isaac Price could be one of the top players in the Championship this season, I think.
Boing indeed. Let's move on to Sheffield United. Shall we? I guess it's making the Wednesday chat maybe a little bit easier at the minute. Sheffield United, what on earth is going on, Kris? From the highs of last season, 92 points, Chris Wilder, they look way off it, don't they?
Absolutely. Normally when I listen to Radio Sheffield, if it's about the Blades, I just skip forward. I quite enjoyed listening to some of the feedback of late because, they're just not happy at all. And there are some people that are already questioning Selles partly because he's not Chris Wilder, but obviously they've struggled under him so far. I think there's quite a lot still want to see what he's able to do with a little bit more backing from the board. That the players they've lost, they've just not been able to replace. Seems to be the big deal. And I think the thing watching some of the footage back from Swansea at the weekend was just they were so on their heels. Like the Ronaldo goal came when the ball broke to him, but that wasn't the first time that had happened. They had 4 shots back to back in a scramble earlier. That United were just on their heels all the time, and it's just not what you would expect from them. Seeing them last season, getting 90 points, they didn't get 92. But
they accumulated points.
But it was just so un-United and. Thank heavens for I think it's the 6th tiebreaker is away goals, and Sheffield United are still bottom of the league.
Yeah, it just felt, Gab, didn't it? Like watching the game back, it was all Swansea, Sheffield United wayward passing. I don't think they had a shot on target in 97 minutes. Staggering, really, isn't it? I mean, is this a bit of a crisis at Sheffield United now? Is Chris Wilder going to get the job midway through the season again? Are we going to see the return at some point, or do you think there's going to be a bit of longevity here with Selles?
Yeah, I don't know whether I'd quite use the word crisis just yet. I think, though, one concern that I have, Conor, is Ruben Selles has already been put in a kind of stepfather sort of position where Chris Wilder is this sort of revered figure at Sheffield United, and Selles coming in to replace him in these circumstances, that's going to be tough for Selles. And so from the board's point of view, I'd be quite disappointed that he hasn't been backed in the way that we would have expected, because Sheffield United, if you include expiring loan deals, they've lost 10 first team players from last season, and they brought in 3, and they've not even signed a dominant centre-half, which they've needed since Harry Souttar got injured on Boxing Day. And so the lack of preparation for a club that are looking to be visionary and progressive and look to the long term, and the AI recruitment and all this kind of thing, they're not seeing what's right in front of them, which is sign a centre-half who can head balls out of the penalty area.
And losing Ahmed Ozic so close to the start of the season as well.
Yeah.
Has just left a massive gap for them as well. That's why they got picked apart by Bristol City, even though on the ball they did a fairly decent job, functional job, looked dangerous.
Yeah.
They just got picked apart. And that's as a direct result of what's gone on in terms of the transfer activity.
So give Ruben Selles a bit of help. That's what I would say in the transfer market.
Yeah, another big one to point out as well is Vinny Souza, and that ground 100%. Cover to lose him is massive, isn't it?
Agreed.
Quick word on Swansea then, Gab, as well. Obviously, Ronaldo getting a goal. I thought the full-backs and the wingers were combining really well. I thought there's a lot of positive signs there, aren't there, for Swansea early on? Yeah,
full-backs and the wingers, definitely. I would also argue Ethan Galbraith was outstanding. Had a fantastic season with Leyton Orient last season in League One, whether that was as a right-back or as a playmaker in midfield. And on Saturday, he used the ball so intelligently and ran the show, really. So I think Ethan Galbraith, he's a young midfielder, very dynamic, but got a really graceful way about him, can carry the ball and progress it really well. So Ethan Galbraith, I think, is going to be one to watch in the Championship this season.
Thought Cameron Burgess had a brilliant game as well. I'm looking at that one. 2 teams relegated last season, obviously played yesterday. Ipswich won, Southampton won. Feels like, Chris, both are trying to find the feet at this moment in time. The quality's maybe not really there, cancelled each other out. Jay Robinson, I thought was excellent, the young lad who obviously had a couple of shots on goal as well, was good in the transition. What did you make of the game yesterday? It was a bit of a bore fest, wasn't it?
Yeah, you can see where they're going to pick up points, these two teams, where they're going to get over the line in games. It didn't quite click for them. Like George Hurst goes on a great run, doesn't quite get the right shot away. The odd chance flashing across the face of goal for Ipswich second half. I think these two teams are going to be right up at the top. There was almost maybe a bit of kind of sparring about it. It's like didn't want to give away too much this early in the season. It feels a little bit, especially with Ipswich, who have dropped 4 points so far. Judging by Leeds United and Burnley last season, you can't lose too many points. But I don't think it's going to be quite that level this season, and there's nothing too much for Ipswich to be worried about. They're still getting into positions to score goals, and I think that'll come. 2 seasons ago, they did concede a lot of goals for a team who got promoted automatically. It's just them replacing them goals that they scored that season. But I think they'll get there. They're making enough opportunities to suggest that it'll come in time, I think.
Goals, Amari Hutchinson leaving as well, obviously for Nottingham Forest, big hole, essentially.
Yeah, I think so. I think Ipswich could do with a bit more depth in the wide areas, but whether that can come from returnees from injury, we've got Wes Burns to come back, which I think is going to help. From Ipswich's point of view, I liked the performance of George Hurst at the weekend. I think that can be a positive for them to build on, but it does feel, doesn't it, Connor, and you'll know this as a Leeds fan, the August can be an awkward month for a club that's just come down from the Premier League, because your star players don't quite know whether they're going to be there, and you're sort of still working yourselves out a little bit. But I would expect after the first international break, Ipswich will click into gear.
Indeed, yeah, me too. I think that's a good point to end on. Quite a surprising result at the weekend, Chris. Millwall 0, Boro 3. Rob Edwards finding his feet a little bit, which is good to see. Come back a little bit reinvigorated maybe into this. Maybe the Rob Edwards that we got at Forest Green, 3-0 win at Millwall, not bad.
I think it's surprising if you listen to Sam Lillibury's pre-season prediction. I thought they were really vibrant, Boro. Like really, again, Millwall, like Sheffield United, they seemed to be on the back foot quite a lot in that game. Was it the Hayden Hackney goal? I think it was like 3v7 in the box, and it was the most simple cutback. Millwall just didn't respond at all. when Luke Ayling beat Jaffet Tanganga to the ball that just dropped, and they was slow to respond in defence, Millwall, and it was a bit of a difficult afternoon for them. But yeah, Boro asked them all sorts of questions, and it was really positive to see when you think about where Rob Edwards was 8 or 9 months ago, and that it felt like the whole football world was kind of feeling sorry for his position. Well, he's got a tune out of them so far. It'll be really interesting to see how he takes this on.
Yeah, there's a real energy about Boro, isn't there? And especially there was at the weekend, Gab.
Absolutely, yeah. I think the Boro Breakdown podcast mentioned this, that a lot of the things that Rob Edwards mentioned he wanted his teams to be when he first took the job, energetic, aggressive, strong against the ball, Middlesbrough are that, and so he definitely seems to have added some extra ingredients that maybe they've missed a little bit in previous seasons. I think Rob Edwards is a great sort of figurehead for Middlesbrough in terms of he's got very good people and man management skills, and he's got a coach on the grass in AD Vivash who did a great job at Coventry as assistant to Mark Robins. So between the two of them, I think that's a nice combination. And Hayden Hackney, we don't quite know if he's going to stay on Teesside come the 2nd of September. But I think, he was outstanding at the Den as well. And they bullied Millwall, which is quite an unusual statement to make, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I was seeing Finn Azaz diving into tackles as well. I was thinking, this is different.
It could have gone either way, because, you talk to Middlesbrough fans in the summer and they wouldn't have necessarily seen Finn Azaz being that type of player, but it does suggest that Rob Edwards has got people to buy in. So the early signs are positive. We'll ignore the League Cup defeat to Doncaster Road. Quite as positive. But league-wise, it's been a great start for them, so something to build on.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, completely agree with that. Let's just touch on as well Hull City, who feel quite vibrant at this moment in time. McBurney up top, bit of a surprise signing. Just bringing Joe Gelhardt in, obviously he was there with Selles last season as well. Gelhardt getting off the mark, McBurney getting on the goals, and I don't know, Hull, I don't really know what to make of them, to be honest, Chris.
Gelhardt scares the life out of defenders, judging by Elliot Moore. I think he's still backpedaling that first goal. But yeah, they kind of dug the 3 points out right at the end as well, like a bit of backbone there. It'll be interesting to see over when we get to Saturday, Tuesday, yes. Saturday, however it goes. Quite the tune that Jukovic can get out of them, but they certainly look from the additions that they've made a much better side than a lot of people first gave them credit for. I think I saw a lot of season previews where it was Wednesday, Hull City, and other for the three relegation places, and I thought all along that they'd be a little bit better than people are thinking. I think they'll come up against better sides than Oxford this season. But that said, what you say, McBurney, great pickup. I know a side in Sheffield whose fans think that he could have gone higher in the league, when you've got Gelhardt and players like that who really can scare defences, they're going to be more than fine, I think.
But before we just move to Gab as well, there, Brandon Williams as well, good signing.
Yes, yeah, and he's one of them. I saw him as an under-18 with Man United. I saw him quite regularly, and he stood out in a side that had Deshaun Bernard, Rochelle Williams, Mason Greenwood. He was one of those up there who you really thought would have a future, and it's not quite kind of happened in the linear way that you might think with a defender coming up at Man United, but he's certainly got that desire, that excellence on the ball, really, really, really good going forward, and he can be a fantastic Championship defender at any side. I'm surprised he's at Hull, to be honest.
Yeah. Quick pivot onto Oxford.
Yeah, I think not the best start from their point of view with back-to-back defeats. I think Gary Rowett admitted after the opening day defeat to Portsmouth that his side weren't quite on it in terms of the levels that he was looking for. So, but one thing is, Gary Rowett's teams have never lost more than 3 games in a row at Championship level in his 11 years on and off managing at this level. So it does suggest that he's going to be very good at when his teams do lose a couple of games, actually stripping everything back and getting back to basics. So I put my faith in Gary Rowett to do that.
Definitely. Well, we're going to talk about Sheffield Wednesday now, and we have brought an aficionado in today, in Chris. Tell us a bit about yourself, mate. What's the background?
Wednesday fan, journalist who's covered stuff all across the world. lived in Italy for like 4 years, covering Italian clubs, particularly the two Milan clubs, and like it was always kind of checking the Wednesday score when I was there though, first thing on a Saturday.
You and Benito Carbone.
Yeah, but it's been one of those. Covered Man United for a bit, been to World Cups, been to Euros, but this is when I'm at my happiest. Doing the day job during the week and still getting to have my Wednesday season ticket back where I was as a youngster. Probably wish it was in better situation, to be honest, but here we are. That was at the Leicester game, at the Stoke game. It's going to be a long old season.
Yeah, I guess we've got to get into it, haven't we? Before we just move on, and Kris is going to give us a bit of depth into it, Gab, your overview of what's going on with Sheffield Wednesday at this moment in time, it's not good, is it?
I think it's a disgrace that this has been allowed to happen. I think other assets of community value across England, outside sport, are given a real protection, and I don't think football clubs receive that same protection. I think the FA have had the power to do more about these situations, and they've washed their hands of it. If you go on the FA's website, there's nothing about financial sustainability or governance, even though they're the ones that really have the authority. The EFL actually don't have a huge amount of authority. They're competition organisers rather than a governing body, so all they can do is deduct points or whatever. And so it's creating a situation where owners can run clubs into the ground, and we're now got a situation where 160 odd years of footballing history is at risk because of one person, and I don't think that's acceptable. So we need the independent regulator in English football when they come in around November time to make an impact, because this isn't on.
Yeah, 100%. Kris, I don't really know where to start. I think there was a funeral before the game at the weekend, wasn't there? Almost a bit of a mock-up from the Wednesday fans, obviously symbolic in terms of the death of the club. We've seen Bolton, haven't we? We've seen Wigan, we've seen Derby get to the absolute brink. It feels like Sheffield Wednesday aren't a mile off now. Yeah,
I think we've got to a position where the headspace is muddled within the fan group a little bit. I was saying before we came on air that I think stuff like I thought the Leicester process was fantastic, and it was on Sky TV. It got a lot of backing from everywhere. It got all sorts of media coverage. I thought it was well carried out, and it turned into one of the great away days following Wednesday. For a team to go out there, lose, and the support be completely behind the players at the end was something I've never known. I think a funeral march at a place like Hillsborough, you've got to be really, really careful. And for it to end up by the Hillsborough Memorial wasn't a great look for some supporters. And I think they've got to be very careful to an extent, that the Wednesday Trust. They've got to really think about the next steps closely. That said, you can see why the headspace is muddled, because this summer's just been one disaster after another. For the North Stand to be shot, the tickets for the game itself only went on sale 2.5 days before the game, because there'd been a prohibition notice on the stand. It only got lifted on Wednesday night, and then there's just no time to sell tickets. Not that there would have been a big pickup anyway, because there's talk of boycotting home games. The Leeds United Cup game in a couple of weeks, there could be almost nobody there, the way that people are talking about not getting tickets. What Chansiri's done to all the, it's got to the point where a lot of people are, with good reason, thinking that he's doing it all on purpose. Really? That he's just being stubborn because he's not reacted well to bad publicity, and as a result, he's kind of taken against the fans who are holding him to account.
What about from the general perspective as well? Because I was obviously from an outsider, kind of looking at the American consortium and wanted to come in and take over Sheffield Wednesday. The breakdown there, was it too much of a valuation? What was it?
Well, one of the consortium said it was the most extraordinary process that they'd ever been a part of, in the way that Chansiri had handled it. But also, I do feel like they were kind of a tyre kicking kind of venture more than anything. since then, since the end of June, I think the best thing that's happened is that everything's gone quiet, which is horrible for a fan base because you want to know what's going on. You want that reassurance, especially with everything, with losing 16 players, Josh Windass and Michael Smith just walking away from their contracts, legally doing so, more players seemingly in the pipeline to do exactly the same thing. The last thing you want is silence, and yet because of the nature of a transfer of a football club with non-disclosure agreements and such, the best thing that could be happening right now is that Chansiri is speaking to somebody and it's getting deep into the negotiations of selling the club, and that it's all behind a non-disclosure agreement, and that's the best thing that can be happening. It means we know nothing as fans until it's all done and dusted. Hopefully that's exactly what's happening, but in the meantime there's still that very real fear. We're 12-13 days away from payday. That's the next big day. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous that the next big day in Sheffield Wednesday's calendar is payday, because we want to know if the players are being paid.
Kris, can I just ask you about the valuation that Chansiri is supposedly setting for Sheffield Wednesday? Because for a while now, the talk has been that it would have to be 9 figures for him to sell the club, and I've heard even recently that £100 million, which just doesn't feel realistic for somebody that isn't paying player wages. But do we think that he could have the power to sell the club but is choosing not to, or is choosing to hold out for just some sort of mad valuation that's just on no planet, really?
Well, he absolutely has the power to sell the club. The working theory is that he has debts in other areas of his life that he needs to be able to cover somehow, and Sheffield Wednesday is the one big thing that he's got to sell at the moment, so he's trying to sell at a high enough value to cover his own debts. Well, that's not our fault. Don't hold a football club to ransom because you've made not only terrible decisions owning that football club, but also in whatever other areas of business that have meant you've lost money there. So, I just think he's got to the point where he knows he has to sell for a kind of reasonable amount. We know he has to sell for a reasonable amount. Buyers also know that if we sit it out for a little while, the value is only going to drop. And watching a game like on Saturday and seeing 8,000 fewer fans in the crowd than there were a year ago, that was our lowest home league attendance for 54 matches, I think, since we were in League One. He's just got us to a position where we're never going to be worth anywhere near what he was initially asking. Now, a lot of the talk is he's not asking that much anymore, but clearly he's still asking for too much. He's saying apparently 60, 70 million. The club was probably worth about 40, 50 at the start of the summer. It ain't worth that now because the 16 players who have left, plus Keelan Kadamatri, who was our one player coming through the system who was probably going to be worth something in a few years' time, has been sold on the cheap. Masaba and Gassama went for a combined 3 million, of which we see just over 2 million because of sell on to PSG for Gassama. They were the reasons to come to the ground and watch us because they were the two exciting talents on the wing. Windass and Smith were the ones getting the goals. They've all gone. You've basically shorn about 50% of the value of the football product there. All you're buying now, given that Chansiri owns the stadium as well and he would have to sell that, you're buying a rundown stadium which was in threat of not being open, and you're buying Football League status, which is only hanging by a thread as it is, because on the pitch, as hard as those players will work, they're worth nothing compared to the squad last year.
It feels like there almost has to be a scenario of which there's some sort of not positive outcome, but there's a step forward of which you can look at and think, that's a realistic stage. If we get to that stage, then things will improve. But it feels like that is just Chansiri selling, isn't it? There isn't a positive step between that, really.
I think if we see out the season, which is by no means a given, like I say, there's 8-9 paydays before the end of the season, and then next summer, who knows what would happen. If we get beyond this season, get into League One, run them at League One costs, you're losing a lot of TV revenue dropping from the Championship to League One. But in terms of the costs of running a League One squad, we could probably be a mid to lower League One squad sustainably under Chansiri. But obviously none of us want that. No. We want to be able to go there and believe that we can win. The greatest thing about being a Wednesday fan, I've said for decades, compared to, say, you know, Man United or Liverpool or whoever was winning everything at the time, you go to a game really not knowing what's going to happen. When we were in the Premier League, we'd beat Man United and Liverpool most seasons, but, you know, draw with Coventry, lose to whoever else, because you never knew what was going to happen. Well, this season we know what's going to happen. We saw the Stoke result coming a mile off. A lot of games are going to be like that. There's going to be a lot of hard work, a lot of endeavour. We're going to get beat, we're going to go down. And next season, we need to be in a position to actually challenge, and that's never going to happen under Chansiri, because it almost suits him as a kind of an owner to be able to run a club at that level. It doesn't necessarily suit him to start to speculate and kind of see what moves can be made in the Championship. He lost a very good manager in Danny Röhl, who really could have, like he proved last year, he can do a certain amount, overachieve with, which wasn't a brilliant squad in the first place, and he's lost an ability to fight above his weight, I think.
Did you have a view on how Danny Röhl has handled the situation? Because I've got mixed feelings on this. There's some Wednesdayites who aren't happy with the fact Röhl had this extended holiday and how he handled it. But then I also feel sometimes in these situations when one person is entirely responsible for a problem, sometimes it's difficult to continuously blame that same person, and sometimes other people almost get vented at. Do you think there was a degree of that at Wednesday, or do you actually think Röhl is to some extent culpable?
I think there's quite a lot of people who are unhappy with Danny Röhl. Personally, I don't blame him one iota. I don't think he has any responsibility in this.
Yeah.
He's been working with this person who, the same people who were digging out Röhl are the ones who were most against Chansiri. And he's had to work with this. He's known what was coming. He fell out with Chansiri in December last year because Chansiri wouldn't lessen the £5 million release clause for him to go to Southampton. Chansiri then responded by giving him next to nothing really in the January market. By March time, it was clear from the way that Röhl was talking that he didn't want to work for Chansiri any longer. He was basically saying his goodbyes in May. And from what I can gather, the standoff between him and Chansiri at the start of the summer, which meant Röhl not coming back, was as much in communication with Chansiri because they both knew that it was the end. It was just about how do we negotiate an exit from here. And then it was when things got complicated in terms of the exit, well, I'm not going to drop the release clause, that Röhl came back to work for 2 weeks. And then there was just that admission of, well, it's not going to happen. And the big kicker is that Chansiri gave him a payoff out the door. The release clause is gone. He fought all those months for whatever it was, £5 million release clause. And then he's given Röhl a payoff on the way out and we get absolutely nothing. So what was the point in holding Röhl to this kind of level when actually Röhl was the one driving the standards at the club? It wasn't Chansiri.
So I've got one more question for you, Kris, which I'm curious about is if, let's say, there is a new owner at Sheffield Wednesday in the next few weeks, what are the big three things that you'd look for in the short term for them to sort of try and stabilise things?
I want them to talk to fans like they're on an equal.
Yeah.
Chansiri used to, he's still there, but he's got a reputation for having these 5-6 hour fans forums where he listens to a question and then answers whatever question he wants to answer, and he goes on long enough that you've almost forgotten what your question was in the first place. So I want somebody who has the two-way communication.
Reasonable ticket prices, I suppose, will be in there as well.
Yeah, reasonable ticket prices. I think somebody who kind of accepts Sheffield for what it is and kind of understands Sheffield in a way.
It's a beautiful city, isn't it, I think?
Yeah, and the thing, I remember I spoke to Chris Waddle at the start of Chansiri's first full season in charge, and I said about having optimism that things were going forward, and he said, yeah, but they've got to get things right early because of the ticket prices. The ticket prices had gone up immediately under Chansiri.
I've tried to buy a ticket for one-off games. I think, is it the big stand, the South stand?
Yeah.
And it's like 40-50 quid or something for a game. It's just...
Yeah, that's a markup for you, Gab. But, Sheffield Wednesday love their heroes, and somebody like Chris Waddle, knew immediately ticket prices have gone up, you've got to deliver, and Chansiri's never really got that. And the third thing is just a bit of care and attention. It's no surprise to anybody who goes to Hillsborough regularly that the North Stand became an issue, because it needs more than a lick of paint. And especially a ground with the history that we've got, as I said about the funeral march thing, it's part of our history. We've got to kind of embrace that, and we've got to learn from that. And, you've got to really look after your facility. And, like if you were sat in your house and you saw things falling down, or, that needs a real touch up, you'd get it done as soon as possible. Things just get left and left and left, and we want to be able to walk in that ground and feel proud of it, rather than, that thing that's been falling down for 15 years is still there.
Yeah, it's about standards, isn't it? Because if you're setting standards off the pitch, you're almost throwing the gauntlet down to the players to set high standards. Whereas if the off the pitch stuff, you don't take care of it, where's the incentive for players to go that extra mile?
Yeah, it's just emblematic, and it's never a chore to go to Hillsborough. It's never a chore. You're following your team, but it
has been for me as a Birmingham City fan. Losing 4-1, but Kyle and Lavery scored twice.
But yeah, it's one of those. You want to go there with that bit of enthusiasm, not the oh no, here we go again. Even before you even think about what's going on the pitch. So just a bit of care and attention in a few different areas would be a massive step forward.
Absolutely.
It's all very basic, isn't it? Feels just a bit of care and attention. But we're going to move on from Sheffield Wednesday, and we are going to move on to a weekend preview, everybody. We're going to be touching on a few games going into it. It's very exciting, isn't it, Gab? The start of the Championship campaign. And we're going to move to a side who've had a very good start. No goals conceded. It's Nathan Jones's Charlton up against Leicester. Mouth-watering fixture, Gab.
Yeah, really liked the organisation of Charlton in the first two games. Really impressive. I think Lloyd Jones has potential to be one of the better aerial centre-halves in the Championship. I think there's going to be better, maybe ball players possibly, although I think he's decent on the ball, but he's really dominant in the air, Lloyd Jones. And then Kane Ramsey, I remember watching him for Crewe Alexandra in his first season as a senior footballer. You could tell he was a real sprinter, but he was also a bit raw. And then since his time at Harrogate, and then moving on to Charlton, he's added those extra elements to his game. So Kane Ramsey and Lloyd Jones have been really impressive for me.
It's very Nathan Jones, isn't it? They look very organised and going into this game. They'll fancy the chances.
And do you know what? Nathan Jones is so good at creating a siege mentality. It's us against the world. And I think he can bring a fan base with him. He did that at Luton Town, and he seems to be doing that at Charlton.
Yeah, Leicester City as well. Interesting, isn't it? Osmajic getting the winner against Leicester at the weekend, obviously for Preston. It's been a bit of a mixed bag, hasn't it, for Leicester City so far?
Yeah, I think so. Yeremy Monga, obviously the one bright spot from the first two games. He looked excellent at Preston, but I think as a collective, it was very disappointing. And I think it probably adds to the feel that how maybe the off-field problems of the club can seep on the field, probably. And I think we're seeing that at Leicester, that the fact that there's been a bit of a power vacuum there because of the question marks over Top's leadership and the sort of laissez-faire attitude that he has, and putting all his power, his responsibility in John Rudkin, who hasn't done the best job in Leicester fan views over the last few years, and that's kind of filtered down onto the pitch. So some big problems for Leicester to address, and I think Charlton have done really well defensively, and they've got a siege mentality, so they might be able to get something.
I was obviously at the King Power the first game of the season, and besides the fact that they could bring on a wealth of talent off the bench, it didn't feel particularly convincing from Leicester's point of view, and the fact that they got two goals from set pieces that had been Wednesday's problem for the last God knows how many years anyway. It didn't feel like a completely convincing performance. They had Jordan Ayew, the ball just sticking to him up front, but they didn't seem to be able to build off it in the way that you would expect, given the pace they've got out wide. And it was
Fatu, wasn't it? He was the
Fatawu and Mavadidi, such talented players, but it just wasn't knitting together at all. And I was surprised that I wasn't more blown away by Leicester, to be honest. And that trip to Charlton's not easy.
Yeah, so I was going to avoid the Leicester game with you because I didn't want to talk about off-the-field issues. I've got to for Southampton Stoke, you see.
The off-the-field expert.
Well, Southampton Stoke, good start. Matt Robbins, quite unusual. Normally, as Simon tells us all the time, normally Matt Robbins a little bit of a slower start, then he gets into it towards the end, of course. But coming up against the Southampton side, it should be a good game, Chris.
I can't say slow start about Stoke after they scored in the first minute of both halves at the weekend, can I? But no, again, I was saying to Gab earlier, it's difficult to judge teams by what they do against Sheffield Wednesday this season because, how do you? But that said, I thought Seko was fantastic in midfield for them at the weekend, really kind of dictated the pace of the game and just pick passes at will. If he can transfer that to, a better opposition, obviously they're going to have a lot less of the ball against Southampton. But I think they can kind of stick in there for a long period. It's then just about whether they can take those chances and be tight at the back, because actually the one thing that happened on Saturday, which cheered the home fans, was Wednesday made quite a few opportunities against them, and a better team probably take one or two of those. So that'll be the one thing I think that Robbins will be thinking about in midweek.
I don't know what you thought as well, Chris, about Million Manhoof, because he scored a couple of goals and looked a real thorn in your side as well as Seko.
I think he started playing about a minute before everyone else, which was helpful. But he took his goals really well and always looked a danger. It was one of those, they could have had 5 or 6, I think, and they'll be disappointed. Maybe Mobama in particular will be disappointed that he didn't score at least one more. But yeah, they can clearly make opportunities against the likes of Wednesday. Like I say, it's can you make those opportunities away to Southampton? They'll be in there though. They'll give them a good fight.
Yeah, I thought Sober Thomas looked really good as well. We'll back again to Chris, because they're up against Wrexham this weekend, Gab. Interesting one, this. I don't really know where to go. I'm unfortunately expecting a bit of a tough evening. Tough afternoon for Sheffield Wednesday, Chris.
Yeah, welcome to mayhem, I think. I fully expect Wrexham will win the game. Hopefully, it means Wednesday can play a bit more of a kind of counter-attacking game, just get the basics right, because when you're working with, let's face it, well, our first 11 is not terrible. Like, the first 11 is players who kind of either played 20, 30, 40 games last season. In Barry Bannon's case, Max Lowe played most of the season.
It was better than I expected on that opening day as well. I looked at the team and I thought it's much better than I expected.
Yeah, but that's the 11. Yeah. On the bench we have Ike Ogbo, Charlie McNeil and Olaf Kabatsky with anything like first team experience, and quite frankly Kabatsky has been way off the pace in both games so far this season. So when you're looking at that, and then you see a bunch of 18, 19 year olds filling up the bench, our great thing last year, I think it was certainly true 3/4 of the way through the season, it might have been true by the end of the season, that Wednesday picked up more points from losing positions than anyone else. We're going to be nowhere near that this season because we haven't got that strike off the bench. That was the one thing Danny Rowe really impressed upon everyone, was we don't have starters and subs, we have starters and finishers. And Michael Smith scored so many goals off the bench as a finisher, coming on and like pummeling teams who were already on the back foot. And we're just not going to have any of that this year. Wrexham have spent pretty well, as we talked about earlier. And I think in those moments where they got slightly outdone by West Brom at the weekend, those are going to be the moments where they have more than Wednesday this weekend.
Feels like the perfect game for Wrexham at the minute, doesn't it, Gab?
Yeah, I would expect them to get off the mark. Again, I think that having Broadhead and Windass around, and one of them might be on the bench, I think shows their depth. Really impressed by Kiefer Moore. I think he's a perfect focal point for the way that Wrexham play, because he's got that target man element to him, but he can also run the channels really well and create space for those around him. I think they have a change in the goalkeeping department, and maybe tighten up a little bit at the back. I also really like Lewis O'Brien as well. I think he's been one of the top players in the Championship in
great finish as well.
So Lewis O'Brien's definitely going to be one to watch.
And I think the way that Wednesday have been weak at certain points at the back this season in exactly the areas that Kiefer Moore is just going to make hay. And we saw it, there was a chance for Broadhead in the second half of the weekend that was all about Kiefer Moore running down into the corner to retrieve a ball that looked lost. And that's the kind of situation where there's not a great deal of fitness in Wednesday. They've had no kind of pre-season. They need this free week of pre-season training, but you just feel like Kiefer Moore's going to bully them.
Right, okay. It's the part of the show I really like, Gab. This is the fourfold for the weekend, so we'll get 2 from you. We're going to get 2 from Chris as well. What are you going with, mate?
I think I'm going to back my own team to beat Oxford United. I think the way that we played on the opening night against Ipswich, and I think probably ironically not quite such a good performance at Blackburn on week 2, but I think we deserve the 4 points that we've got so far, albeit in a slightly different order. So I'm confident that we'll dispatch Oxford. And I also think Coventry, after that goal-laden week at Derby, game at Derby, I'm backing Coventry to beat QPR.
Interesting. Chris, what are you going for, mate?
I'll add into that Ipswich, away from home. It wouldn't always be my pick, but they're at Preston. I know Preston have started better than people would have had them down for, but I see enough about Ipswich already, even though they've drawn 2 games, particularly at the weekend. I thought they were the most likely to win, and I think they'll get off the mark win-wise at Preston. And maybe I'm just doing this to jinx them, but I think Sheffield United get off the mark against Millwall. I can't see them, despite what we talked about with the issues they've not plugged this summer. I just can't see them going 3 out of 3, especially against a Millwall side who I was really disappointed with at the weekend.
Yeah, I'll go for 1-1. I'll go for Birmingham to get the win. I'll go for Sheffield United. I agree with you there. Although difficulties against Millwall previously, so we'll wait and see. But guys, hope you've enjoyed that one. We are going to be back with the Sportsman Untitled next Monday with myself and 2 very special guests. But before that, on Friday, we will be talking about Norwich versus Middlesbrough in a little bit more depth. So see you then. Cheers.